Okay, so I'm back. I have to apologize. My battery died in my other camera, so I had to switch over to another one. I also have to say that I just got braces a couple days ago, so if I talk funny or I'm kind of stumbling on my words a little bit, I'm just sort of getting used to this hardware in my mouth. So now I'm going to talk about how I would actually plan out the whole story time. In a case like the book that I just did before, normally I would do that standing up and we would all be moving around together, but I'm sort of in this very small space right now, and I couldn't align the camera in order to be able to show that. But a typical story time, I would begin by greeting everyone, and then we would go right into a shaker song. So I have these little egg shakers, and we do the same song every single week as an intro. I have the kids, they shake their shaker up high and they shake it down low by their feet, and we go through like a series of actions with the shakers, and then that sort of gets them really excited. They come in, they want to sing the song. Over the course of a storytime session, they all pretty much learn the lyrics, and it's a lot of fun for them to do. And after that, we do open shut them, and that's just a way to get everyone settled back on the floor and to signal that we're ready to begin the actual story time now. So what I do is I have all of the books that I'm going to be reading, and maybe a few others, set up on a storytime table along with any props that I might be using for that day. And I let the kids try to guess the theme of that day by themselves by seeing if they can figure out anything that the illustrations and the props have in common. So once they guessed that today's theme was Halloween, we would begin talking about the letter H, and we would talk about how H is for Halloween. We'd figure out the sound of it, and I have my H here and an H here, so we would look at the shape of it. And what I do before storytime begins is I scatter a bunch of die-cut letters on the floor. Not the entire alphabet, but maybe 4 or 5 different letters. And the kids can come in and see if they can find today's special letter on the floor, and then they'll each have their own. So they each pick up their letter, and we discuss how it looks. This one has straight lines. This one has one straight line, but also a curvy line. The kids can trace over it with their fingers to kind of get an idea of how they would write that letter and how that letter really looks. And we would talk about other words that begin with the same letter and see if we could even tie those words into today's theme. So we might do hot cider, or hairy gorilla costume, or haunted house. And in that case, I would teach the word alliteration to the kids, which is always fun to hear preschoolers say big long words like that. And we would talk about the shape of a big capital H versus a small lowercase h, and even though they're different, they do sound the same. So after we finish talking over the letter, I would begin with the first book, which is always, of course, the longest book while I still really have them listening. Sometimes I'll say a few words about what the book is going to be about, and then we would look at, see if I have my book, we would look at the title together and look at the cover and see if we can find today's letter on the cover. And so we would see it here. Vaughn would be probably too hard of a word for them, but here, hunt, where it actually begins with the special letter, we could see how it's a big H and how hunt has the sound in it. So then we would start reading the book. I typically like my story times to be more interactive. I think that the kids and the parents alike tend to be more engaged. So occasionally I'll pause and I'll ask, what do you think is happening here? Or do you think that was really a very nice thing to do? Or we might look at an illustration and I'll point to a particular picture or part of a picture and say, what do you think is happening here? And I think that's nice because It gets the kids looking more closely at the pictures, seeing how the pictures relate to the overall narrative, and thinking maybe a little bit more about the story itself. And then from there we seg into a finger play or a song or a rhyme or sometimes a felt board, though usually I typically save the felt boards for later, closer to the end. And sometimes those will emphasize something like counting, like if we did the 5 little pumpkins instead of the other one that I did earlier, then we would learn how to count down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then from there, we go into the next book, which will be a little bit shorter than the one that we did earlier. And then, again, another transition. If we did a finger play earlier, this time we might do a song instead. At some point, depending on how much time we have and how the kids are sitting for the story time, I'll do what I call a halftime stretch, and that's basically just to get the kids up, to get their wiggles out, basically, to have them stretch, and then eventually the stretches, the actions will lead them back down onto the floor again, sitting. And so from there, we'll do our last book, or sometimes if we have time, we'll do 2 last books, and those will be the shortest books, or the most interactive books. And then after the books are done, I usually like to play some kind of game, and the games usually emphasize a skill like figuring out a pattern and then finishing that pattern, or sorting or matching by color or size, or identifying shapes or numbers or letters, or matching the lowercase to the uppercase letters. And a lot of times I do those kinds of games on the felt board, or I have a magnetic board as well, or sometimes I'll bring in actual objects specific to that theme, and then when we'll play a game, we'll get down on the floor and we'll play some kind of game. And then after the game, then we do a craft that's related to the theme. And at this point, I give the kids a piece of paper, or just have them do right on their craft to write out their special letter. So they have their own little paper one, and they can look at it, and they can write out the letter and learn how to write the letter. I also encourage them to write their own name, because by that point, a lot of kids are learning how to write out their own name. And if they have trouble doing it, then I or a caretaker will write out like a dashed outline so that the kid can trace over that. And I encourage caretakers to do this and point out to them that it's helping them learn the shape of their letters when they do those little outlines, and have their child trace over that. And it's also kind of preparing them to hold a writing instrument for the purpose of actually writing letters out. And so while we're doing that, while we're doing our crafts, I like to have some kind of conversation with the kids about what was your favorite book, and what was your favorite part, and did you have a favorite picture? And it's nice because then they can sort of remember what we've done during the day. And if time allows it, I like to let each child come and stand up if they want. I don't push anyone to do it, but if they're willing to, then each child will come and stand up and show us their craft and talk about what he or she made that day. And that, I think, is a great way of showing children how to take turns and how to listen and be respectful when someone is taking their own turn. And then finally, at the very, very, very end, before everyone goes, we sing one last song. It's just a quick song, and it signals that the story time is over, and that, we had a great time, and we'll see you next week. And then as I'm leaving, or as everyone else is leaving, I have sort of set aside a bibliography of what we've done that day. So it'll have all of the actions, all of the finger plays and the songs that we did, including any that we might not have gotten to that we were going to do. It includes a list of all of the books and suggestions for further reading similar books if anyone's so inclined. And then I try to encourage everyone to sort of be on the lookout for that week's special letter. So, you know, when you're out and about, look for the letter H anywhere you can find it. And that's pretty much how we would do a normal story time. Sometimes I'll do something a little bit different, something a little bit special for certain holidays, just to mix it up a little bit. But that's about it. Thank you.